fun yet?
Hey!
Come closer. I dare ya!
Now, is that just a regular dare or a double dog dare?
That yours?
No? But it would be so awesome if it was.
I always thought of Spider-Man PS4 as the one game that felt full of nostalgia for someone like me who grew up with a lot of Spider-Man video games. Even though the game felt quite modern and looked amazing, the game had that special spark that brought old players back in the game. And with the release of the DLC that added more content, yeah, you can say that Spider-Man PS4 was a success. The DLC was made of 3 episodes and the first 2 were quite good actually. When the third one was released, expectations were present and high, and by the looks of it, the developers did not let down the players at all. Silver Lining is the third episode of The City That Never Sleeps, and the conclusion of this epilogue that felt like a whole new chapter into the game, rather than an extension or an addition to a bigger story. This episode concludes the story of Hammerhead and his rampage in New York City, and it presents Spider-Man trying to work with Silver Sable, who might be an ally, but not for certain, in order to defeat the rest of the Magia, beat Hammerhead, and recover the stolen Sable tech. Compared to the first 2 episodes, who had an interesting take on the story, feeling sometimes mysterious, other times like a noir comic book, the third DLC brings everything back to the comic book roots of the game, and it feels like it is part of the main game. Action, intensity, dynamic moments, plot twists, all those things are part of the first mission of the DLC and set the tone to what might come next. The developers knew how to build the epilogue's story, I have to give them that. The third episode was full of action, from moment to moment, from suspense to suspense. It was mixed in a way to make the player keep playing to see what is gonna happen, and making the side content feel like an addition to the main story once more. It totally gives this feeling of, I have to do everything at the same time, those things are gonna show up more and more and I have to deal with them. Which, I'm not gonna lie, it is an interesting take. Unlike the other 2 episodes, this one is full of content and you definitely feel it. It has a lot of missions that makes the player be stuck in the game and wanting to complete the story. It can be clearly seen as an ending to Spider-Man's adventure in a very big way. It might look a bit overwhelming, honestly, when it comes to the quantity of the content, but it is not. It just feels right to have everything put in the last chapter of the game. It throws you right in the middle of the action, you try to understand what is gonna happen, you try to stop what is gonna happen, and then the dynamic and intense final battle will conclude everything and will make you think that, yeah, you might want to play a little bit more this game, after a break for a breath of fresh air. A great feeling of dynamicity. I think this is the perfect word to describe the story of the third episode. If the player might think of the first episode who started calm, eager for an adventure, the second episode starting directly with a tense and dark context, this time the third episode starts instantly with a lot of action that raises the player's interest. This unexpected twist in the way the developers wanted to start the story makes the player feel like getting up on their chairs and jumping right into the action in an instant. If you played the first 2 episodes, you truly are here for the third one to find what is gonna happen. So when you start to play and discover the episode's story, you know you are in for a ride. The story of the DLC feels full of content and has a lot of activities and side missions. Besides the main story, activities like capturing Screwball, finding humanitarian help for the people of Symkaria, and stopping Magia goons around the city to create chaos are making the DLC feel alive. When it comes to the emotional part of the story, the developers present Silver Sable in a way to make her a tragic character, one that is forced to do things in order to help her people and country, which works well. Now, if I have to compare the sensation this episode gave me with the previous content of the game, I have to say that this story feels much closer to the experience that I had in the main game. The story of the episode did not give me time to think about what I have to do next, what is gonna show up on the map, and what challenge I should play now. The story felt full of content and elements that make the player to be there continuously in the front of the screen to play the game. I think the third episode tried to be like a conclusion to something that was presented in a unique style, and it felt right somehow. The first episodes tried to present the player something unique in a certain way and style similar to comic book adventures, and the third one truly presented conclusions of character arcs and stories in the way the main game did and presented its story. It felt familiar, it truly felt like part of the vibe and the style of the main game. It felt like you were playing the episode just like you played a mission from the main arcs of the story. To be honest, the adventure felt amazing, and having the episode start and conclude with boss battles, the player might feel satisfied and happy with how the DLC was made. I have to appreciate the developers' work. They knew how to build up the player's interest when it comes to this epilogue. As I said, the story is full of elements that keeps the player stuck in the game in order to complete it, and the characters are the ones who drive this dynamic over its limits. The way Spider-Man interacts with them in this DLC is making the player think of the original source material. The way the story of Silver Sable was put was made to give her this humanity that makes her a silent heroine who has a bigger cause and she is forced to fight other people's wars in order to protect her nation. It adds an interesting layer to Silver Sable and it makes you see her differently a bit from the way you saw her during the main game. Also, with this DLC, the importance of all that Sable tech that was stolen was presented much better. And if you see the build-up of this MacGuffin that always shows up and powers up the enemies, yeah, it is logical to give it a great importance in the story. And it adds a reason not only for Sable to fight for, but also for Spider-Man, knowing those weapons might help those in need in Symkaria, instead of having them around the city as forgotten remnants of a past crisis. It is a little twisted, I know, but thinking of Silver Sable's background story, I cannot help but to think of this layer of logic behind the DLC's story. Having her as the first boss of the game, it adds a lot to this ambiguity of what she might do here, but the developers knew how to bring interest in her story in an instant. You do not know her agenda, you try to stop something big that is related to her indirectly. So yeah, go ahead and find things about her, to understand her better than you already know her. The interaction between Spider-Man and Miles, even though it is made through voice calls, makes Miles' story feel natural and makes the character to evolve in a way that it totally makes the player want to see him in action. It is only normal for a kid with superpowers to be excited to become a superhero. I liked those scientific explanations that Spider-Man gives to Miles regarding physics and maths and how he is using them when he swings around and fights the bad guys. Also, related to how their relation is presented, Miles is not ready for what he is supposed to do, and having Spider-Man to explain all this stuff, and keep in mind that Peter had to discover this all by himself, it truly makes the moment more important to Miles. He starts to get prepared properly for what he will live from now on. Those lessons totally endorse the role of mentor Peter got at the end of the main game. There are, however, some small things that I did not like the small focus on Hammerhead that became a fully cyborg now and you have to beat him, because obviously he is still the big bad guy of the story that has to be defeated. I think they could have made some more moments with him to see what he has become, but thinking of it now, it makes sense to have him show up, to make him do a very powerful and dangerous attack towards the good guys and then disappear and have him back as a final boss. It makes him unpredictable and makes the player expect anything from him, not knowing what the villain is capable of. As for the small cameo of Black Cat that confirms she was safe all along and saves Peter from Hammerhead, I think it could have been done better. I think it could have been done better if they could have created a bigger moment, but it is what it is. I love that they did not let the whole Black Cat thing a mystery, even though it was obvious. The developers completed all the arcs, including Yuri's arc. The side quest that presented her turn to vigilantism adds a lot of layers to her characterization. It truly makes her a person who has to do anything to achieve her purpose and to push the limits of justice for what is right. Transforming her into her comic book counterpart, the vigilante Rafe, adds a new layer in Spider-Man's story. He will know he will see her again sometime, so they will still be friends? They will have to fight each other? Those are some of the questions that the player will have at the end of this DLC. All the stories presented in this epilogue, with its unique, brighter and darker sides, were made to be clear and enjoyable in the end. You find out what is gonna happen with each and every one of the characters, and you see how the main villain, who felt like it was a bigger threat than it initially looked, is defeated. Even Mary Jane has a development in her journey, having the chance to go to Symkaria and truly discover the reason behind Silver Sable's motivation is real or not. And yes, finally, Screwball is captured and it is stopped. I understand her character development, I honestly do, and I understand all this build-up in this DLC was made in a way to make her annoying, and when she gets captured, the player will feel satisfied, but they could have done her development a little bit better. Her final mission was quite a challenge, and this adds to the satisfactory part of her capture, when Spider-Man catches her, but I don't know, from my perspective, the mission could have been done a bit more intense to truly make you feel like, yes, I finally did it type of thing. When it comes to the characters of this DLC, yeah, I think you can say that Insomniac Games knew what they were doing, for most of them, and even though you might not like some of the outcomes, you can still feel them logical and natural in their characters' evolution. I will not talk about the gameplay of the episode, it is the same one as in the main game and in the other previous 2 DLCs. The rewarding pattern is the same. The player will unlock 3 new suits if he progresses through the game and completes the mission. The release of the DLC was close to Christmas of 2018, and if you played the game back then, you might know about the small update gift from the developers. With the release of the DLC, the Spider-Man suit from Sam Raimi's movies was added to the game, so technically, with this DLC, the player has 4 new suits instead of 3. It was a nice gesture from the developers, considering that the players truly wanted that suit to be added in the main game, back in the day. When the game was remastered, other suits were added, like the Amazing Spider-Man suit, the one worn by Andrew Garfield in the movies. So when it comes to the wardrobe collection for this game, it is quite a pleasure to collect all those suits and wear them during your gaming experience. And, of course, let's not forget the new enemies that are much stronger than the usual ones and have interesting yet similar attacks. The side activities that are connected with the side story, in this case to get humanitarian help for Symkarian people, and different Screwball challenges that have to be completed in order to catch Screwball. So yeah, the same formula. I do not find this as a problem after all. Each episode was meant to present a new challenge for the player in an interesting way, but also to not feel different from what we were used to. Doing those challenges and adapting them to the style and the context of the DLC, it was a good choice in my opinion. I mentioned it before, but it is true. Those 3 DLCs felt like they were part of the main game, they just were not placed initially in its structure, and having the same mechanics and activities in those episodes, it felt familiar. In a way, it is a bit of disappointment the developers did not add anything new to the game to make it more engaging, but they knew how to add intrigue and interest to the player when it comes to the story and the context of the episodes, which was a nice move to make the players play the game a bit more and discover new adventures. I'm not a fan of the DLC concept most of the time. I think it is just a way to cash more money on a game that was already done and completed, but sometimes it works. In this case, I can say it worked a bit, because it built up the curiosity of the player and it gave them more content, and being set after the main game, it worked better than being set differently or during a certain time from the main game. I don't know, mostly to me the DLC was okay and it brought a few more hours to enjoy this game that reminded me a lot of the games from my childhood. Now that the whole DLC is completed and all the episodes presented their ideas and concepts, I can say that overall, The City That Never Sleeps is made to feel like a new edition of the main game that was already there. At times, it might feel that the story does not belong there because it feels a bit different with what we were used to from the main game, with its darker turns and moments, but almost the entire time it feels right there, like a chapter that was waiting to be unlocked after the player completed the game. If you think and try to compare the feeling the main game is trying to awaken in the player and the feeling the DLC is trying to awaken, I do not think you can compare. I said at the beginning of this video, Spider-Man PS4 is a video game that felt nostalgic and full of emotion for someone who grew up with great Spider-Man games and wanted to play another great Spider-Man game. The City That Never Sleeps is just content that brought you back to that nostalgic feeling once more. Honestly, now I am more curious about the next two games from the series, Miles Morales and Spider-Man 2. I wanna see where this story and this universe will head on. For what it is, until this moment, with the main game and the DLC completed, I think that Insomniac Games did a good job to present a new and intriguing comic book universe with a favorite superhero. They put their passion for the characters on the line and they delivered a good package of stories. Maybe sometime in the future I will come back to this game to play it on another platform, but until then I am quite satisfied with this game. It was a good gaming experience and it made me think of the games I played a long time ago. I don't know, maybe I will go back to play those games, just for the sake of feeling like a kid once more. Who knows?